Thursday, everybody. And now let's talk automation.
Happy Third Thursday. I said it in the intro and I'll say it again now. Thank you so much for everybody who's joining us. We are going to be having a discussion about building a data-first culture today. And I hope that we're going to give you guys some actionable insights, because as we were prepping for this, everyone's been talking about doing this for a long time. So let's uncover why it's difficult and what we need to do to get onto the right path. So as we are going through our introductions, I would love for everybody that's joining us online to jump into the chat, tell us where you're joining from. We've got people from all over the world on the screen with you, but we'd also like to hear where you're tuning in from. So make sure that you throw a quick hello and where you're joining from into the chat while we're going around the room here. But we're going to get started with some introductions. So Anna, can you give everybody a quick introduction to get us started?
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna. I'm a data scientist. I'm chief data scientist for a global corporation. I've been working in data science since, before 2000s, and really evangelizing data science use cases globally and how to get value out of data.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. So Kyle, you are up next on the introduction train.
Yeah, hello everybody. So my name's Kyle Winterbottom. I'm the founder of a business called Orbition Group. We're effectively a talent solutions consultancy that help organizations to build data analytics teams, capabilities, and leadership functions across the UK, Europe, and USA.
Wonderful, thank you. And now, counterpart Kieran, go ahead and do your introduction.
Hi everyone, for those who have forgotten who I am or are new to the podcast, I'm Kieran. I've been working in business and technology for the last 27 years. I've always loved data right from the very first roles, which were actually programming SQL and Microsoft Access many years ago, but you could really see the power of data. That really came to the fore when I managed 11 data scientists for an insurance brokerage company that got took over and bought for over 50 million. One of the reasons being that it was a very data-driven culture. It took time to get there, but by goodness, it worked so well.
Great. And I am Emma, the other co-host. I see one person coming in and saying that they think I dyed my hair. I will debunk that myth. I just cut it. I cut out the blonde and now it is back to its natural color. So thank you for noticing though. So today, again, as we talked about, we're going to get started with a conversation about how to build a data-first culture. And Anna, I'm going to come to you first with the idea of what does that actually mean? Again, kind of going back to this idea, we've been talking about this thought process for a long time, but what does it actually mean for us to build a data-first culture and kind of get that definition so we're all speaking the same language out there?
Yes, data first, we've been talking about it for a really long time. And somehow it feels elusive for several corporations. However, IDC noticed that 46% increase in metrics of happiness for financial scores, clients, and employees metrics for data leading organizations. So yes, it pays. But what does it mean then? It means everyone in an organization being empowered and making decisions and being rewarded for making decisions that are based on data and not intuition. Intuition is great. Some of us are very gifted with it, but sooner or later, it's going to fail. It's a matter of probabilities. We can have amazing intuition, amazing ideas, but when you put it against data, they get proven right or wrong. And in fact, that is sometimes one of the obstacles of becoming data-driven, that ability, that exposure to being proven wrong and re-evaluating your processes and your vision. So yes, that's what it means. And in order for that to happen, a few critical things need to happen in an organization. First, leadership needs to be involved and needs to be built, making decisions themselves based on data, being willing to expose themselves to being proven wrong from data, and really be consistent in how they use data in organizations, so that this behavior and culture sprinkles down towards the organization. And then the different people in the organization, from marketeers, from procurement, from the guy who's organizing how drivers are going to distribute products, all of them need to have the data available to them that will empower them to make better decisions. So for a procurement company, you may need to know the prices of other suppliers in real time. You may need to know that certain assets in your company today, certain products didn't sell off so well, so you shouldn't buy so much of those. Or maybe those prices aren't working anymore, so you need to buy something cheaper. This type of information is only good now, not last month. Last month is too late. And it's important that companies don't put themselves in a position to be managing by looking at the review mirror. That's also what being data first means, being empowered to make decisions in the now and into the future. So we mentioned one of the steps to becoming data-driven in organizations. One of the elements is leadership, of course, but then people having access to data that is trusted and shared in the organization is very important. And of course, data literacy. Because in many organizations, they're starting to, even when they first hire people, they are starting to require plenty of data savviness, like coding skills, etc. Other organizations choose to have pockets of data savvy people spread across the business, connected with dotted lines to data COEs, which is another approach. But either way, it is critical that over time, data becomes part of the DNA of everyone in an organization. And for that to happen, it's important that we choose tools and processes that make our lives easier, that lower the complexity of having data in your day-to-day. So there you are.
Great. So that sets a really wonderful foundation for me to come to you, Kyle, with our next question. And so we're talking about what is that data first culture, some examples of maybe how people are thinking that they're doing it, but maybe not. But can you talk a little bit more specifically about what are some of the challenges that are standing in the way of businesses being able to do this effectively?
Well, I think there are many, and obviously it's a complex topic to tackle, but I think broadly speaking, they're not often, most organizations don't tackle the change management element of trying to drive a data-driven culture until it's too late. You know, it's pretty obvious that there's a lot of time, energy, resource, money spent on developing the kind of technological aspects to become data-driven, you know, to get data from where it is to where it needs to be and to make sure people have access to it. And I guess broadly speaking, the technicalities are not often where the game is won and lost. I think as an industry, we're pretty good at that. So I think broadly speaking, there's been too much focus on businesses knowing somewhere in here that there is value, but maybe not having too much of a strategy as to why they're trying to build a data first culture in the first place. And that leads to some kind of maybe poor practices or behaviors around, well, let's just build a data lake and then we can see where we are from there, because they feel obliged to be trying to build a data first culture because everyone's talking about it. It's there's an obligation, there's a peer pressure element to it. So I think if there's one thing, it's probably that we focus on building and the technology components that might allow us to start driving some of that, but ultimately taking the business on that journey to create that culture, to drive usage and adoption, to kind of improve literacy, all of that stuff often is left until the last hurdle, when business leaders start to see that, hang on, this isn't providing us with the returns that we thought it would do. And by that point, you may have already kind of lost the crowd.
You must be coming after my heart talking about change management. And we've got some other pieces, questions-wise, to come up as we continue with our discussion. But before we jump to that kind of more people-centric view, because we are going to dive into that a little bit more through the conversation, Kieran, I do want to come to you with one of the questions that we got. So last week, we've gotten some feedback that people want to kind of prompt us with questions rather than just asking them in the chat. So we love when we see questions coming in. I see some discussion going back and forth about one of Richard's questions, but this time we got some ahead of time. And so one of the questions that we got was taking a look at, we see that there's tons of unstructured data coming into organizations. So what types of tools are available, or how is technology driving a change to really give us the ability to make meaning out of this unstructured content that's coming into our organizations every day?
Okay, super question, and I'm going to lean in what Kyle said there just to begin. Because when we talk about structured data or unstructured data, or big data as it's also known, to Kyle's point, rather than jumping in and analyzing, working out what it is and where it is and how we can do whatever with it, there's a tremendous assumption around the fact that it will be value laden, so that every customer interaction, every rich media, every social network conversation is going to be laden with value is not true. Also, it's a case of, is there an actual business idea behind it? Are you just trying this? So you cannot manage unstructured data without knowing why you need it in the first place. Now, there are certain things you sit there and you do, and you can say, yeah, I absolutely can extract value from it. So you can analyze communications for regulatory compliance. You can track and analyze customer social media conversations and interactions to work out how a customer feels about you. So sentiment analysis. You can get reliable insights into customer behavior, from phone calls and agent behavior and emails and everything else. So there is value to be there, but do, as Kyle said, begin with understanding the business question. You then work out, okay, so there is a business question. What type of unstructured data is there? And there's tons, media, entertainment, surveillance data, geospatial data, audio data, weather data, voice, video, you name it, it's all there. And this starts to introduce the problem. So normally we talk about relational databases where the data is immediately structured. This unstructured data can't be immediately transferred into a structural relationship, rows and columns and tables database right off the bat. It doesn't conform to a data model that exists, but it doesn't mean that we can't get it structured or find a method of structuring the data. And then the key bit is, and there was a Mr. James roll-off I noticed in the conversation as well last week, must be a relative of some sort, Emma, I'm sure. He made a great point about developing a common understanding of what the data actually means across the enterprise. They used the old phrase when I was managing and leading that AI team, the number 5 might have meant different things to different people. But, assuming you understand there's a common business model, then you're using machine learning and artificial technologies to extract value out of that data, to store it. And then there's a ton of different opportunities on the network or in the market that weren't there. Kyle mentioned data lakes. You've got Snowflake, NoSQL, MongoDB, SAS TextMinder, or go to some of the cloud services like Azure Cloud Services. How do you go about this? Well, the biggest thing is your data management budget and capabilities within your organization directly impact the amount of data you'll be able to collect. How do you go about that in a particular order? Define your business goal, to go back to what I said, consider the business needs and capabilities, the security, the budget, the business strategy, whether you need it on cloud or on premise, the time it's going to take to cleanse and categorize the data, to interrogate and analyze the data, and most importantly, not do this as a theoretical exercise, having stored it somewhere, but get that data out, structured and unstructured, into insights that are available to the right people in the business to make the right decisions at the right time. And as you do this and build this muscle, you can build it over time, extract more value, gain more value, put more value into your unstructured program system, databases, people, process, and everything else in between.
Can we just take a moment to let it sink in how many different technology tools you just rapid fire through out there with no
stumbling? It shows you available on the market. Do you know what I mean? Because we assume unstructured, there isn't a lot there. No, there is a ton of tools. But
I'm just super impressed that you said all of them without getting tongue-tied. So I needed to acknowledge that before we moved on. So I teased that we were going to come back to this people-centric idea, Kyle. So I want to come back to you again to dive into this idea of the people side of building this culture. And, obviously we can't just talk about data if we're talking about how to use this to drive a culture. So what characteristics should people be looking for as they look to kind of change this culture? Who should you be working to build as a part of your team? Or how do you help people build the skills to be a part of that future strategy?
It's a great question, Emma. I think you should probably have answered that, given this is your bag. But I think basically diversity is key here, right? In terms of diversity of skills and experience. I think what we see, and it's started to get better over more recent times, but what we've certainly seen is this kind of obsession to be hiring highly technical people all the time for every role in every data capability. And look, obviously those people are absolutely essential, because the kind of technical work is what drives us to be able to have access to the data to make more informed decisions with, et cetera. But I think what we see is where the teams and businesses that do really well, they have a diverse workforce in terms of skills, so that they'll focus on people that have strong soft skills that can go and, you know, work with the business. There's all these kind of, you know, fancy new titles coming out now, right? You know, the data translator, the data journalist, et cetera. So I think businesses are starting to understand that, yes, you need your analysts, you need your scientists, you need your engineers, you need your architects, of course, but you also need people that can go and work with the business, understand what the business is trying to achieve, get on the same page as all of the users who they have to influence, you know, in terms of adoption, to drive the story, to drive engagement, all of that type of good stuff. So I think, you know, the more rounded the team, typically, the more success these people have in terms of driving overall value out of the other side of this. And, you know, like communication is a great example, right? I think everyone speaks about communication very loosely, almost as a throwaway comment, that it's important. And of course it is very important in the role of translating, storytelling, and all of that type of good stuff. But, you know, is there a strategy behind that? Is there a budget assigned to, you know, what you're going to be doing in terms of the team and the value that you're adding and where you're up to and the results you're getting and how you can help parts of the business, et cetera. So I think the people component is about trying to get a more diverse range of skills and backgrounds and experiences into that broader team.
I do want to pull up one comment to add, and going back to, again, my obsession with change management, but talking about the why and then also the communication piece that you brought up too, Kyle. Starting at the very beginning, regardless of if it's a data strategy or implementing a new tool or even just like making small changes as an organization, driving this why and communicating that across your business so that people understand what's in it for them is so critical. If you just tell people we're making data-driven decisions and go figure out how to make and interpret this data and make decisions off of it, or better yet, just telling them what the data says and telling them to go make decisions off of it without giving them the why behind it and helping them understand how it's going to improve their position, help them make better decisions, you're not going to get the kind of adoption that you're looking for. And that is probably a really large part of why we've spun wheels. If you just shout data into the wind, nobody's going to really latch onto it and understand what you're looking to accomplish within the organization. So those were kind of my two adds there to the people side. I always talk about the why and communicating and how important those two components are. So this one is probably going to be one that we kind of go a little bit around the table on as our last question because it's so big. And this was another one that came into the comments as we were kind of looking for what people wanted to learn. And so Randall Bailey asked us, you know, and he kind of set it up as the chicken or the egg. And we've talked a little bit about this probably with some comments as we've been going, but can you start implementing a data-driven culture before digitizing all of the relevant data streams and everything in your organization? So I'm going to come to you first to kind of share your thoughts on this. And then if we have time, we'll certainly come back to Kyle and Kieran to kind of hear their thoughts on it as well. But chicken or the egg, do we have to digitize everything and have all of our data perfect first, or can we start building towards that culture?
We absolutely can start building. Data will never finish getting cleaned. If we have to wait for all the data in the world to be clean, there would be no Google, no search would be there, because certainly the internet doesn't have a lot of clean stuff. And yet somehow, from the wisdom of the crowds and the right algorithm that is able to understand the wisdom of the crowds and make sense of it, you manage to find the content that you need. So absolutely. And in fact, we need to start because cleaning data is an enormous effort. And there's also the question that we were just mentioning. Why? Why does it matter? Not all data in your data sources has value that is worth the time of cleaning it. But how do you know that if you don't go and experiment? And how can you experiment if you don't start with experimentation, data science, right? So there are patterns. I often get a bit annoyed when people tell me, oh, data, garbage in, garbage out. And it's often people who don't even work with data that say that, because how do you know what piece is garbage and what piece is not? How can you say all your data is garbage if you haven't experimented making value out of it? And even with dirty data, a lot of AI algorithms will spot any relevant patterns in your data and guide you to what makes sense to clean. And you can iterate this process to clean, to have a good data structure, which isn't perfect. But good in business is better than perfect a lot of the time, because you want to be solving the next problem that has high ROI rather than making perfect things that, after being solved to a degree, don't need to give you less incremental ROI. So yes, absolutely. And in fact, it is urgent that we do so, because before we were talking about unstructured data, and yes, there are wonderful sources of unstructured data about how our clients are interacting with us, how our employees are interacting with us, etc., that we absolutely need to listen to. But many organizations don't even listen to the structured traces that are being left out there. Organizations spend a lot of money asking CEM surveys from clients, which is wonderful, but they don't even notice or analyze necessarily the patterns that the clients leave with not their words, but their actions. In fact, we have two very scarce resources, time and money, right? Maybe health is a third one as humans on this earth. And our clients spend their time and their money with us on our websites, talking to us, buying from us. And this generates a trail of structured and unstructured data. When you apply your machine learning to it, even if it's still not a perfect data set, I have seen companies increase their engagement scores to up to 30% in the way the clients interact with them in different organizations in the market. And so yes, it is urgent. How do we get started then with the chicken and the egg? Well, often you start small. You start with an experiment that you think is going to pay off and have a nice win story for us. You secure an easy win or a few easy wins. And with this, you continue to build momentum. As your support for data increases, you start looking at other situations in which data supports the mission of the company. And with that, you get executive support. Once you have executive support, then you can go larger scale and then democratize data access to the firm and increase data literacy through more than just training. So there you are.
Got to unmute myself there. It took me a second. So we saw a couple of other comments coming in, and it sounds like, we're all in agreement that you can't wait for all of your data to be clean. I was throwing some of your quotes into the comments as you were going, because you had a lot of really great sound bites there. But we still have some time to kind of touch on it. So I do want to come to you, Kyle, and then maybe Kieran, if we've got time, come to you to touch on this question as well. But Kyle, anything to add on the thought process of being, starting before everything is perfect, and some other actionable items for people to take away?
Yeah, well, I think to echo what Anna said, what's the old saying? You can't boil the ocean, right? And I think if you try to get everything in order and perfect and clean before you start, then you're never going to start. So, of course, just to echo her sentiments around, start small, prove the use case, get a good success story, get the value, show that it can be done, and then that obviously then normally leads into, more interest from the business, more budget, more time, more resource, etc., to kind of drive this forward. But yeah, I don't think any business is going to succeed by trying to get in a perfect situation with all of their data, because I guess competitive advantage comes into it, right? And first mover advantage and all of that type of stuff. So if you're there forever trying to clean your data and not do anything with it to become a better business and make more informed decisions, then you're probably going to be left behind.
Kieran, I'm actually going to put you on your toes and go back to something you guys were talking about in the comments versus asking the same question. So let me see. So Richard did put a quote in about, data is of course important, but the place for the greatest emphasis is on facts. And you responded to Richard's comment, but can you kind of talk through this idea and some of the conversation you guys were having back and forth there?
Yeah, I worry about data facts, if that makes sense. And someone else, I think it was maybe Ryan, put into the comments as well, saying like, your fact and my fact may be different. In other words, what he was talking about there is the definition of a particular something inside of an organization. So we really have to be careful about engaging. You mentioned, Emma, about the why behind something. If we don't bring people into the mission, in other words, explain the why, explain the how, spend time with them on a really practical level, making sure that people understand behind the black box, everybody is on the same path and on the same journey and understands all the data, then we really are in trouble. It is lies, damned lies, and statistics that we're going to end up with. So that's the gist of the conversation there. And to join that to the conversation a moment ago, with Anna and Kyle, you don't need perfect everything in data. You do need, to James Roloff's point, a common definition of what you're talking about. You don't need to solve every single problem inside of an organization, but you do have to solve some problems to actually end up with business value. And you need to get some business value as quick as you can to prove to the organization, and it goes back to your change management piece, to convince people that the why that you're trying to achieve is worthwhile. And if they don't understand the definitions, they're not bought into it, and they're not getting value from any data program at any stage, then you really are in trouble as an organization. You will not build that data-driven culture.
You're going to give me a complex always talking about James on here.
I thought I could add a little bit to this comment of change and also data literacy in the organization, right? I think change goes a bit both ways. The change of an AI data-driven world is coming. There's no way around it. And the amount of times that, I've seen the result of an AI algorithm that analyzes correlations of 900 products over thousands of clients, and then show it to the business, and they go like, "Oh, but can't we really do just 3 against 3 and see what happens?" Because people want to boil down this pearl into something that is very consumable and it fits an Excel spreadsheet that they are used to, and that satisfies their sense of safety. And this too is part of a change, a culture change that is needed in organizations, to not be afraid or of not knowing, or to learn a bit. I mean, in a business center today, it's important how Netflix does a little recommendation of movies, or how Spotify manages to get you the best songs, just the flavor, so that when you have that implemented in your organization, you can go, "Oh, that's nice."
Wonderful, thank you. I do want to take one moment before we wrap up. Kieran, you've got this nice fancy little banner behind you. Can you talk a little bit about why that's there and what happened this week?
Harrison Good mentioning that in the commentary. Yeah, and Harrison's in this book, by the way. I wrote a book about organizational digital transformation that launched on Monday on Amazon. About 12 months worth of work, about 90-something contributors who are really practical, hands-on experts in the digital transformation and intelligent automation space. And I've already mentioned some other people on this call who are on it. So James is in it, who happens to be Emma's husband, by the way, for those folks who are joking in the background. Harrison's in it as well. So delighted it's out. I can now go to sleep, because I think it's taken 12 months of sleepless nights, weekends, and whatever else. And the PR agency made that for me, which I'm now told I have to have with me for every time I talk to anyone for the next couple of months. So please get used to getting bored with that until I get bored with it and see how we go. But I can now tick that box. I can now say I've written the book, and after 3 months of publicity, I might be able to stop talking about it for a while as well. And I get my copy on Sunday, because as odd as it seems, I haven't even got a physical copy of my book, the digital, yes.
I have it on my Kindle, and I've been reading it, and it's good. So go find your way to, there's plenty of links online. We'll make sure Kieran puts one in the comments as well if you haven't already gotten your hands on it. But that brings us to the end of our 30 minutes. Thank you both so much for joining us, and everybody who joined us live and in the comments. If you're going to catch the recording later, feel free to comment questions or anything that you've got. We'll come back and we'll interact with you there. But until we see you next month, happy Third Thursday.
Thank you,
Happy
everyone.
Thursday.